I've often been called a night owl, and that's because it's at night that I see the clearest. It's at night where I track down and expose all the hidden mysteries and all the concealed gifts that are invisible by day. It's at night where I access my deepest self, and it's from there that I serve. We're finally live, everybody. I hope there's someone left there to watch us. Welcome. We are having, again, technical difficulties with any new medium. Of course, it takes a little while for this to start functioning better. Last week's episode, for those of you who have tuned in and were watching us, might have encountered some of these difficulties. So everyone is welcome to go to our archive section, and you'll be able to watch the previous show. It has two parts to it, so then you can catch up to what we're doing and the approach that we're taking in it, rather than me repeating it this week. So those are the technical things aside. I think we've been a little bit overambitious, and we were trying to provide a lot more, and it's not meshing with the technology quite yet. But each show will improve. It reminds me of when I first watched Jimmy Kimmel, not Jimmy Kimmel, but Jimmy Fallon. His first show, I liked him from Saturday Night Live, and so I was having great hopes for him. And the first show, it just was something terrible. And I wasn't sure he could make it, or he could make it do. But day by day, practice. Eventually, he's today the #1 late night talk show host. So hang in there with us. Yeah, I'm reaching for the stars with you. Okay, so let's get started. So again, we're going to be opening up the bids shortly for you to ask any question you may have, and I'll answer it as best as I can in my way of approaching these things. But let me help you get clear on what I mean by questions. Now, there's two basic types of questions. Now, the first type of question is a question that you already know the answer to. These are the kind of questions that you got A's in your classes for, that you get money on Jeopardy for. It's, again, questions that you have to somewhere seek in your memory banks the answer. That's not what we're looking for here. We're not looking to hear how smart you are, or unless you're here to share some insight. That's a different story. That's not question-oriented. But when you're asking a question like that you already know the answer to, I'm going to call you out, and I'm going to call bullshit. Now, let's clear that up. What do I mean by bullshit? Well, there's three types of shit, and I can put up with the first two, but I can't put up with the last one. Now, the first kind of shit is bird shit. Now, bird shit is the kind of shit that gets on your car, right? It's kind of annoying. It gets on your windows. It's difficult to get off, but you put up with it, and it's not going to be the end-all, be-all. The second type of shit is a little harder to deal with, and that kind of shit is dog shit. And that's the kind that gets on your shoe. It's kind of rough. You got to rub all over the grass, try to get it off. You might have to rinse it. That's quite annoying. You can put up with it, but it's rather annoying. But the third kind of shit, a big kind of shit that I'm not going to put up with, is bullshit. Now, bullshit is too much of it. And if you're asking me a question that you already know the answer to, then I'm going to call bullshit. So don't waste your time with that. Now, what's the second type of question? Well, that's the most beautiful kind of question. The second kind of question is a question you really don't know fully the answer to, or you're seeking more clarity of what you can't see. A question which we can ponder and find new answers to. That kind of question we can do a lot more with. So those are the kind of questions I gratefully invite you to bring to me. Now again, when I call bullshit, try not to bitch too much. Okay, bitch. I forgot about bitch. Let me define bitch for you. A bitch is someone who disparages, resists, and controls. Now, that's not gender specific. I'll call it, if you're behaving in that fashion, you're a bitch. Doesn't matter your gender. Now, the unfortunate part, though, and the serious part of being a bitch, is that you're likely to die 5 times more than the average person. Okay? There's a lot of stress and a lot of tension being a bitch. So I will call you out on a shitty question, and I will let you know if it's bullshit. And I suggest, for your own sake, not to bitch too much about it, but give yourself an opportunity to go forward. Okay, so we've got that. Now, I think we've got some seconds here. Maybe there's a question coming up, and if not, we'll continue to go forth. Now, I'm being informed that for some of you, my lips might not be in sync with the audio, so hang in there. We're not sure what's involved in catching that up, but we'll work on that. Okay, so what's the purpose of these questions? What are we really trying to do? Right? Wait, this is self-work. This is self-exploration. Now, what's the purpose of this self-work and self-exploration? Well, it's to get to know yourself. It's to get to know who you really are. Now, who you really are, how do you determine that? What's the easiest way? Well, for most of you, you try to determine that by what you identify with. And you think you know who you are, or you make up or behave from who you know you are by what you identify. So if you identify yourself by, let's say, your physical body, then, that all then determines, okay, no, I'm going to stop what I'm saying here. We have a caller. So Tamara's on the line here. Hi, Tamara.
Hello.
And nice to have you on board here. Well,
very nice to be here.
Good. And you got, what does she have, a minute and a half? Is that it? So we can chat and you can talk about things, or you can get right to the questions.
Well, I hope I don't have a bullshit question.
Okay.
So I'll ask. Okay, so what I've found for myself lately is that I find myself quitting quite often in my self-work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering how I can find duration in my work that I do without quitting on myself and falling asleep to working on myself.
Well, you're partially answering it there. The falling asleep part, that's just, that goes with the territory of self-work. Because self-work begins with self-observation, objective self-observation. And so it's okay to fall asleep. The point is to then remind yourself. It's a form of self-awakening. An old Russian philosopher called P.D. Ouspensky was very well known in the 1920s, wrote a book called In Search of the Miraculous. And in it he talked about trying to stay awake, just like the way you're mentioning. And he said, I'm going to remember what I'm doing and where I'm at. And as he was walking along the street, insisting he's going to be conscious that he's awake, of where he's at, suddenly his attention was taken by some restaurant that he was at, and it was about a week later that he remembered that he forgot to stay conscious, because he got so wrapped up in the food, and then he went to the restaurant, there was people there he knew, and he fell right to sleep in his day-to-day life. So what I'm speaking of is that it's a habit to be asleep. You have sleep habits. When I speak of habits, it's perfect example is like when you cross your arms. So you cross your arms this way, let's say. And for most of you, the way you cross your arm is comfortable. It feels nice. And you can add a minute, by the way, okay? When you cross your arms the other way, because your habit is to cross your arms this way, when you cross them the other way, it's going to feel awkward and uncomfortable. And that's because it's just not your habit. Now, it's not very significant how you cross your arms unless there's something wrong with your shoulder. But that speaks to the fact that we have habits we're asleep to. And habits are important to be able to create some sort of normalcy. But when we fall asleep or oblivious to what our habits are, then it's harder to stay awake. So the practice of self-awakening and self-awareness, and we're running out of time here with you, Tamara. We're going to continue to answer the questions, so thank you for joining us. The practice is creating new habits of self-awareness, little things that will spark you to wake up in the morning, to spark you in the afternoon, to spark you in the evening, to remember that, okay, I'm going to practice self-awareness during that time. Now again, how do you do this self-awareness? How do you not fall back to sleep? You will fall well until it becomes a habit of insisting on recommitting to staying awake in your life and to staying awake of what's around you. And the way you do it is you do it like a scientist. You observe yourself as if you're observing a person in the third person. If you're observing somebody you don't know, you observe the world around you, you observe what's going on. And in that, it's much easier for you to then stay awake to yourself in that moment. Now, that is a place to start, but that's not the main starting place. Because you want to understand there's different degrees of sleep state also. So a lot of it depends. Okay, now I'm hearing that I'm frozen, and so if anybody is getting different feedback from me, whether I'm frozen or not, let us know. Is it still frozen? Okay. And no, okay, so I'll continue. So the point here is that let's understand what are these three sleep states that you go through that make it so comfortable to stay asleep. Right? So we're going to break it down. Because again, there's a practice and ways of staying awake, but it also helps to be aware of what you're asleep in. Now again, there's three types of sleep. There's, are we okay?
Great.
Okay, wonderful. There's three types of sleep states. There's the melodramatic sleep state, then there's the trauma sleep state, and then the dramatic or drama sleep state. Right? Try to say that 10 times fast. Now, what are these different kinds of sleep states? Well, melodramas they're wonderful. Right? They're very, very entertaining. You can get swept up in it. You know, I was listening to the Olympics and listening to, I think it was for 5 hours, all of Brazil stops what they're doing at night and watches these 5 hours of soap operas. Highly dramatic and melodramatic society that gets really engaged in these kind of soap operas. And so they're very extended dream states, very elaborate dream states that we project all our thought, how we view the world and everything out into the world, and it's interactive with other people. So that's melodrama, and I'll be going into that more and more over the weeks so you can understand more thoroughly. But the second state is a trauma state, or what I like to call trauma drama. And that's a state of sleep that keeps repeating itself. It's like a reoccurring nightmare. You might have had a trauma in your life, and it keeps, excuse me, keeps showing up in your life. Let's say you had a heartbreak. So every time you get into a relationship, that trauma comes up again. Now, you know, this is also in most extreme cases like what PTS victims might be like. So this trauma is something that is almost a moment in time frozen, that keeps being played out over and over again, very dramatically for you, over and over again. And you are kind of stuck in this repeated thing, again, frozen almost in time, asleep. And you keep seeing this. And so what you do is you might slip back into melodrama so that it's a more comfortable sleep state so that the trauma isn't so overwhelming for you. The third sleep state is drama. And that's just basic drama. That, you know, the best way to describe that is it's not melodrama like you watching Empire at night, but it's more of a serious kind of drama that close to serious type of drama that doesn't have too much elaborate dream kind of experience, but is very much still not awake. And you are, and in it you experience it like quite profoundly. Dare I say dramatically, of course. Now, when you reach that state, you're closer to waking up. Right? You're closer to now beginning to experience an awakened state. So again, there's melodrama, there's trauma drama, and then there's drama. And what you try to do is work your way down until you're at the dramatic point, still a bit asleep. So you want to compare it to almost awake, almost asleep in bed, where you're still associating things that are outside of your sleep state into your dream, and you're incorporating into your dream. So you're on the verge of awakening. So it's important to know these three different states because you want to take a look at your life and how you tend to live it. If you're living a highly melodramatic life, then we really have to build some strong habits because you're going to have to do these habits half asleep, if not fully asleep. So we have to get you going in that realm. If you're in a dramatic state, you can slip in and out of awareness, and that's kind of more helpful. Now, what happens in this drama state or dramatic state? It can get so serious that you become serious. And to compare it, it's like when Neo flipped over to the other side in the Matrix, and he suddenly was in the real world. And it was kind of cold and harsh, and he felt out of sorts. It's when people feel highly disconnected initially from everything around them, because you've come out of your dream state into reality. And reality initially feels very harsh. But you're completely sober now. You see, all dream states are a form of intoxication, whether you're intoxicated in an extreme state melodramatically, or you're intoxicated with a single traumatic experience, or you're just intoxicated with the drama of it all. When you get serious and you snap out of it and you're suddenly in reality, now you're sober. And sobriety, for anyone that's become sober, it's a difficult time period. It takes a while for your brain to catch up and say, hey, we need to create more endorphins and other type of chemicals to help us feel more balanced and more equal, because we didn't need them because we were busy sleeping, so it wasn't needed. Just like if you're taking drugs to have the same effect, or alcohol for the same effect, your brain stops producing these important chemicals. And it takes a while for it to start producing it again when you become sober. So, you become sober. You are very serious. Your job at that point is to really endure that, because that's the most difficult part of the self-awakening and self-awareness work, to just be okay with that kind of serious feeling. It might be even a little heavy, because you're now in reality. But as you endure that, as time passes, those chemicals start returning. You start acclimating to this new life. And what happens is you start reaching a lucid state. And what that means is suddenly the light of reality starts shining on you. And this light lights up where you're at, so you start seeing things more clearly. So you're not really learning anything new. It's like walking into a dark room or a badly lit room that you walk through and you start hitting things and knocking things over. You're not quite clear what's going on. But just turn on the light and it becomes very clear what's there. You start walking through with no problem, and you're able to manage yourself, and you actually, because of the light, you see clearly. Because lucidity comes from the Latin lus, meaning light, lucidity. And at that state, that's when you're your most awakened and the most joy of the reality of life. And it's the complete other extreme, if you want to call it that, of melodrama. So that's a long answer to a short question. But more importantly, and I'll wait for a couple of questions before I put you through, but that's not really where you begin. Now, most of you begin to try to become awake and stay awake by identifying yourself first. And I want to point out that that could be an endless amount of things. You know, you can identify yourself as physically, right? Whether you're tall or short, fat or skinny, that can become your identity. And that's how you see yourself. And so you react in the world according to other people who might view you as obese or anorexic or too thin or not muscular enough or too muscular or what have you. That's how you begin to look at the world. It's like a channel on the television set. It's the physical channel. Excuse me. And so in understanding that, you can easily switch out of that identity and switch to another identity. Let's say it's gender. So now all your conversations, interactions, and how you're viewing yourself is through gender and how you're viewing others. And so whether you're male or female or transgender, that becomes a whole conversation issue of self-identity.
So Joseph, when I'm playing one of those roles, is that then in a drama state? And I'm still dramatic?
Well, when you're, and these are questions coming in from people that are here live with me. When you are playing these dramatic roles, when you're playing these gender roles, let's say, or physical roles, and of course there's mental roles and psychological roles, There's identifying yourself according to astrology. So, you can look at someone and go, hey, you look like an Aries. And, oh, how do you know I'm in Aries? Well, because you're being an asshole. And, that might be the reason why somebody views you as what they view. Oh, well, no, I'm a Pisces. So you've just reduced the entire world to 12 signs. So 12 basic human types. Again, is that dramatic? It could be done from a dramatic point. It could be done from a traumatic point. It could also be done melodramatic. But it's not an awakened point because it's just a partial identity. It's just again, you have a whole television set with different channels or the internet with different websites and you're stuck on one or two. No, you're not seeing yourself clearly as that if that's how you're strictly identifying yourself. So it could be viewed depending on how deep you're into this role. Just like when you watch actors that are really great actors, that's a real melodramatic interaction. Actors who are not that good, they might have slight drama to it, but they're not as invested. So that determines it, right?
So then that is why the sober stage feels so miserable.
Well, it can occur quite miserable for a while. Again, that's the longest stage of enduring that serious stage, because everything occurs quite serious. And serious is good. You need to be serious, because in seriousness you get focused. In serious you wake up, and you need that focus. So part of the answer to Tamara's question is you need to get more serious. Right? Now, for some people, the idea of serious and feeling this kind of what you might even call miserable might go against how we think we should be. We should be feeling good or behave well or be nice people or be joyful. Well, again, those roles, and those are psychological roles, by the way, that we identify ourselves by, like I'm good, I'm a good person, I'm a con, I'm a bad boy, these are all just separate identities that, again, keep you from seeing who you really are. So, yes, you want to also begin to understand that if things start getting a little bit serious, if I start feeling a little bit more serious about my life and maybe a little bit heavy, and because of the reality of the things that will hit you when you begin to wake up, is seeing the results of your actions in your life suddenly there, visited upon your doorstep, that you realize, holy shit, I think I made a mess of things. And it's easy to want to fall back to sleep rather than stay awake and start undoing this once and for all.
So where exactly does celebration and fun come into seriousness and sober?
Well, again, it's serious people that can have the best fun, because when you start becoming serious, you start becoming an adult, and there's no more of this childish kind of play in your life. You're now behaving like the adult you are. The child part in us is only intended to remind us of different states of approaches, but child happiness is not the best. Really, the most fun is really adult fun as you stop and think about it. I mean, adults can have sex, and there's a lot of fun in that. This is not of the realm of the child. So when you bring your child into play, to try to be playful and light, and that's what it sounds like you're asking me, because that there's a presumption that you can't find happiness in something miserable. We might sit there and feel a certain amount of depression and go, man, I'm really depressed. Like, this really is tough. And there may be other occasions that it could be even worse. But you're lucid, you're watching yourself in the third person, like, okay, look, I'm experiencing depression. You're not going, I am depressed. Now you're suddenly looking objectively going, I'm experiencing depression. And you can go, wow, that's a serious depression. I'm not sure I'm going to get out of that one. This is a heavy one, right? And you might even make humor out of it. Well, how depressed are you if you're actually being able to make a joke at that point? And that's the strength of being serious now, because you are actually now able to do something to change and make a difference in what you're experiencing. And you're able to see your experience is separate from you. Let me make it easier for you. Let me give you a different example of this. 2 minutes, everybody, just close your eyes for a moment. And just let yourself breathe easily and effortlessly. Right? You got nowhere to go, nowhere to be. You're here watching. So now you can just listen. And just allow your body to relax. Listening to my voice. Now you want to know where to begin? This is where you begin. I want you to begin to follow your breathing. Follow your breathing in and out. In and out. And I even want you to follow your breathing in, and then that point before you breathe out, notice that turning point. And then as you breathe in, do the same. So notice the turning point when you're breathing out, and the turning point right before you're going to breathe in. So watch yourself breathing in, turning point, breathing out, turning point. Now you might feel uncomfortable suddenly. So just notice you're uncomfortable and return to the breath. In, turning point, out, turning point. You might have a thought. See the thought. Allow it to be there. And then return to the breath. Breathing in, turning point, breathing out, turning point. Breathing in, turning point, breathing out, turning point. You might feel a feeling. Allow the feeling to be there. But you're the one breathing. You notice your breathing going in, turning point, going out. Observing yourself breathing in and breathing out. You might have more thoughts. Allow them to be there. As you breathe in and breathe out. These thoughts pass. They move on. So clearly you're not your thought. Breathing in, turning point, breathing out. You might have other feelings that you're feeling. Allow it to be there as you do the turning point. Breathing in and breathing out. That feeling might have now passed. So now you know you're not your thoughts or your feelings. Breathing in and breathing out. And now continue to observe yourself breathing in, turning point, breathing out, turning point. Breathing in, breathing out. And allow yourself to do that a few more times. Okay, now you can open your eyes. Now what you'll notice from that is that you are finally getting in touch with you. This is where you begin, not with identifying yourself and finding your identity. I am a woman, I'm a man, I'm of color, that's not where one finds their identity. One finds their identity in this practice. This is where you find yourself, in your breath. It starts, that's the beginning, following your breath, because that quiets you enough where you can watch your thoughts and you can watch your feelings and you can experience these things without being swept away, because the breathing keeps you grounded, keeps you here, keeps you present. So once again, for the question that came earlier, start practicing this breathing exercise of being present in breath. That will remind you again, and the habit of doing that several times a day will remind you to stay aware of your surroundings, of yourself. So we start in the wrong place generally. We normally start with, again, trying to understand ourselves through identity, our culture, our family, and so on. Nothing absolutely wrong with that. But if you want to get the best approach, the approach that's going to get you more clarity in a more efficient fashion, then you start with your breathing. And as simple as that may sound, that's the fundamental beginning. Now, once you've been doing that for a while, it'll become almost something that you do automatically. And if you wind up with a habit of awareness of your breath, then you start becoming aware of more nuances, because it's like zooming in with a microscope. Because as you start taking in the breath, you start realizing, I'm taking in life. I'm taking in life. And when I exhale, I'm giving life back. The lesson of the breath is the lesson of love, because the heart needs to take in and then give out, take in and give out. invert and evert. And so that process is what keeps the heart going. The heart never closes. It just, it opens and functions more readily when it follows the same kind of rhythm as does your breathing. So invert, evert, invert, evert. Feel yourself and then feel what's outside of you. Feel yourself and then feel what's outside of you through your heart. Now another exercise you can do is imagine nostrils on the middle of your chest. And allow yourself with eyes closed to begin to breathe through the nostrils. That's there, centered in the middle of your chest. So then you breathe in the world and what everyone is feeling, and then you breathe out everything you're feeling. And that rhythm will work. Now you may want to start by first breathing in and feeling yourself cleared out. But once you feel yourself cleared out, your feelings and so on, then you can begin to feel what's outside of you. This begins to expand and has your heart being utilized more. So it's all interconnected. And it might seem kind of disconnected to you, but you start with the breath. Then we can get to the heart. Now, we don't have a lot of time left because of, again, our technical issues here. So I'll put it out to the group here. Any questions you'd like me to take a look at or possibly discuss here?
I just want to mention we got boosted by a gentleman named Burke Lake. I'm assuming it's a man.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Burke.
Okay, thank you, Burke. Anyone else around this or any other questions that I can assist you with?
Yeah, we have viewer questions that have
Okay.
either messaged them in or tweeted us.
Okay.
I'll start with one here. Okay, this viewer is actually from British Columbia, Canada. And it goes, I'm in my mid-40s and I feel like no one is out there for me anymore, and I am scared of the possibility of being alone. My friends keep on pushing me to find someone, but at the same time, I don't want to be desperate. Why am I having such a hard time finding someone?
That's an unfortunately easy question to answer. You have to be with yourself first. Right? You're with yourself, you're never by yourself. Right? You can be by your side, but you're never by yourself. When the concern is more about what I'm going to get outside of me, so because like you can even feel in the question that kind of franticness or attachment to the fear of loneliness. Understand that the path to aloneness is through loneliness. The path to aloneness is the path to oneness. So one has to travel from loneliness to aloneness to oneness. It's the deep loneliness that has us be forced back upon ourselves, to be still enough and to experience ourselves. And begin to become maybe friends with ourselves and find a connection with us, because I can only give a lover what I give to myself. If I'm not providing myself and I keep giving to you, eventually I'm going to go empty and I'm not going to be able then to provide anything to my lover. So the action and the love and that mate you're looking for is you right now. And you need to take time with yourself and connect with yourself and love yourself, or at least get to be a friend to yourself. And that will generate an energy coming out of you that will attract others. So that's the easiest. But unfortunately, I say it's unfortunate because it starts from a lonely path. But again, all three have the word one in it. And so to find eventual oneness, you do have to go from a loneliness to aloneness. There's the word one in there, and then oneness. And that's the path to then feeling full. Now, from that oneness, if you met someone where you felt good with yourself, good inside your skin, that's first a very attractive quality, and people find it quite attractive. But mostly, it's a comfort that others seek and want to be associated with. So the answer to the question for this individual is you've got to begin to have a love affair with you. And the best place to start is by befriending yourself first. So take a look in the mirror and see how you are to that girl or guy or other gender that's facing you there back at the mirror. And see, are you being a good friend to that person? Are you treating that person as well as you would treat a close friend? That's where you begin. So, anything else?
Yes, we do. We have plenty of questions that have come in. So here's another one. This one is actually from Alberta, Canada.
I'm moving so that they can see that little man behind there. He looks like he's doing some Tai Chi or something.
Looks like a woman.
Right? Okay. But the fact of the matter is, it's just somebody on a bicycle that I happened to catch on vacation in that position. So.
Very nice.
I just wanted to take myself back to my vacation place.
So again, from Alberta, Canada, and they're asking, I'm worried the best sex is behind me now that I'm well past my hormone-crazed youth. Is this true?
You know, the opposite is true. I mean, I think it becomes almost evident. When your hormones are running you, what kind of sex can you have? Because that's in the way of you connecting with sex itself. Now, we don't have enough time to go into what sex is and so on, but what I will say is once that calm of that angst, to find fulfillment through sex, that lust is running through you, it's a quite different story when you don't have all these chemicals pushing you and forcing you every which way. At that point, you're going calmer, stiller. You actually begin to think. You pick and choose. You're calm enough to blend with your sexual experience and your lovers. In that, you start discovering a slower approach. You start discovering nuances. It literally, again, is like zooming in. And as you zoom in, you see more nuances. And so sex becomes more creative, more explorative, easily. Much better. Now, if you're wondering what that sound is, right by the ocean here, we have this train running through. So, it's a very unique area that has a train running simultaneously with the ocean. But yeah, that's what's going on here.
It's an underwater train.
Okay. Still making a lot of noise, but underwater train.
Yeah.
So. Again, we've had some difficulties here technically. We are inviting you to take a look at our previous archives. I'd take another question, but we're beginning to get closer to the end. So instead of rushing through, I invite you back to come next week. And please feel free to bring up just about anything. Do not feel too put off with the fears of asking a question that you may already know the answer to. There may be something there you might need in asking that, and you may want to see that you're more interested in wanting to know what you already know rather than something new, and that can set you in the right direction of re-looking at this in a different way. So again, on behalf of my crew here, we want to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week, 8 o'clock on Tuesday. So till next time.